Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. It started as background noise. Another story from across the ocean. A new viral outbreak in rural Kazakhstan that supposedly made people violently delusional. I remember hearing about it in passing. Something about livestock infection, rural clinics overwhelmed. Bizarre footage leaked online of screaming villagers. But in a world saturated with headlines and panic bait, most of us tuned it out. It didn't feel real, not then. My name is Lucas Merritt. I'm 36 years old and I work as a systems engineer for the Loudoun County Data Center Complex, just outside Ashburn, Virginia. If you don't know Ashburn, it's one of the biggest data hubs in the world. Half the internet runs through our backyard. But I didn't feel like a gatekeeper to anything important. I mostly spent my nights checking thermal outputs, toggling backup servers, and drinking stale coffee in a server bunker built to withstand an EF3 tornado. I live about 15 miles west in a town called Purcellville. Quiet, old brick buildings, lots of history. I rented a second-floor apartment above an antique shop downtown. Nothing fancy, but it had a view of the Blue Ridge Mountains if you leaned out the bathroom window. The first sign that something was wrong came on a Wednesday morning in late September. I was driving home after an overnight shift, watching the sunrise blur the mist over Route 7. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat. Amber Alert sound, but it wasn't an Amber Alert. The banner just read, CDC Advisory Secure Home Entry, Avoid Crowds. Unusual Behavior Reported Eastern WVVA Corridor. More info to follow. I thought it was a mistake. The text didn't even link to anything. Traffic wasn't bad, but the air had that eerie silence you get before a thunderstorm. When I got home, I found my neighbor, Helen, out front watering her mums. She was in her 70s, wore gardening gloves like a surgeon, always said hello. You see that message? I asked. The CDC one? She squinted at me over her glasses. I don't pay attention to that stuff. Probably another COVID scare. I'm too old to worry. That was Helen's last conversation. I'd come to regret not pushing harder. That afternoon, I decided to go down the rabbit hole. Reddit threads were flooded with videos that kept getting taken down within minutes. Blurry clips of people with gray skin, jerky movement, attacking others. One post claimed the CDC was scrambling a containment unit out of Fort Detrick. Another said locals in Harper's Ferry were hearing gunshots in the woods. I messaged my younger brother, Sam. He's ex-National Guard, used to be stationed at Camp Dawson, West Virginia. Now he manages a tactical gear store in Winchester. His reply was curt. Not a drill, get supplies, lock up, we're heading to you. At 4:47 p.m., the power went out. The grid in this area is surprisingly stable. Everything's redundant because of the data centers. But this felt different. The cell signal followed 30 minutes later. Emergency radio frequencies were filled with static and bursts of coded speech. I could pick up NOAA alerts, but they were looping old evacuation messages from last year's hurricane season. Then came the sirens. Not the weather kind, the old civil defense ones. First from the fire station near Main Street, then the one from the high school across town. My apartment trembled under the sound. I opened my laptop, connected it to my backup power bank, and tried to map the siren pattern. It wasn't random. It was the Federal War emergency tone. 3 5-second pulses spaced 15 seconds apart. I only recognized it because I'm a systems geek. That tone hadn't been used in a live broadcast since the Cold War. Something was breaking loose. Sam and his wife Tara showed up just after sundown. He drove their armored Suburban. the one with the reinforced brush bar and the ham radio antenna. Their 10-year-old daughter, Ellie, was curled up in the back seat clutching her tablet even though there was no Wi-Fi. Sam didn't even say hello. He threw me a duffel bag. Kel-Tec sub 2000, 9mm. Got 30 rounds in each mag. Keep it on you. I stared at him. Are you serious? He just looked me dead in the eye. There are people out there. Something happened to them. It's not just infection. It's different. We passed a farmhouse outside Charlestown. Blood everywhere. No bodies. Tara was pale, her usually fiery tone subdued. You need to get ready. We're not staying long. I helped them carry in supplies, dry goods, water, iodine tabs, first aid kits, fuel canisters, portable solar panels, even old MREs from Sam's deployment. He had thought ahead. A full trauma kit, Faraday bags, and 95 masks. But the real change came when we lost the sound of birds. You don't notice them until they stop. By 9 p.m., we started seeing the movement. From my window, the town was still, but around the old church square, we spotted silhouettes moving against the lamp glow. Slow, disjointed, like drunks, but worse. Sam checked through binoculars. Third one's got blood down its shirt, not fresh, brown. Looks like defensive wounds. Tara stood behind him, holding Ellie's hand. What are they doing? They weren't walking with purpose. They weren't running. Just slowly drifting toward light sources, bumping into railings, cars, each other. They're responding to sound and light, Sam said quietly. We used to run drills on riot control during bio-risk scenarios. This is worse. They're not reacting with fear. At 10:16 p.m., all lights in town went dark. Grid shutdown, probably intentional. That was when the noises began. Screams. Far off at first. Not like movie screams, just sudden bursts of panic, muffled through the night, followed by silence, then something worse, wet impacts, gnashing, and the occasional thump of something falling. The first wave hit at 11:03 p.m. Helen's building was the first breach, her front door splintered with a crash loud enough to hear from our apartment. Sam grabbed his rifle and stepped into the hall. I watched through my peephole. In the glow of his weapon light, I saw a shape moving unnaturally, stumbling forward. A smear of blood on its chin, eyes vacant. It was Helen, or what was left of her. Her nightgown was soaked. Her fingers were torn at the nails. Her left arm dangled loosely, broken, but she kept moving forward, unfazed by Sam's warning shout. He didn't want to shoot, but when she lunged, mouth open, jaw slack, he put her down. One clean shot to the head. She dropped instantly. No flinch, no delay. Just gone. Tara sobbed quietly, turning Ellie away. I helped drag the body out into the stairwell. Sam checked it for signs. No pulse, of course. Eyes dilated, skin pale gray. No blood pumping from the wound. No exhale. Dead, but it had been up and moving. It took a bullet through the medulla to stop it. We left it there, half covered in a tarp at the base of the stairwell. Sam didn't say anything for a long time after that. He cleaned his rifle in silence, seated on the floor of the kitchen, and I watched the barrel rotate in his hands, deliberate and slow. I could hear Tara whispering to Ellie in the back room, keeping her calm, distracting her from the distant echoes coming from Main Street. The sound of a car crash broke the silence not long after. No alarm, no horn, just an impact and the skittering roll of something heavy bouncing across asphalt. Whatever had caused it, we weren't going to check. By 5 a.m., the glow on the horizon began to creep in. I looked out through a narrow crack in the blackout curtain, careful not to disturb it. Street lights were down. One of the power poles had collapsed, sparking and smoking beside the antique shop. 2 figures moved slowly through the debris field. No weapons, no gear, just wandering. One bumped into a mailbox and continued on, its head lolling at an unnatural angle. I noticed its foot was twisted completely backward, but it still managed to move without hesitation. That sight did more to rattle me than anything else so far. Pain didn't factor in. Damage didn't stop them. They weren't alive in any sense of the word, but something was still guiding them. Sam stood beside me, sipping cold instant coffee from a metal camping mug. He didn't speak until he saw the same twisted foot. "You see it now, right?" he said. "Motor functions decoupled from pain response. Could be spinal bypass, could be something else." "Like what?" I asked. "Some form of direct neural override, not just brainstem reflexes. Whatever this is, it's smart enough to shut down all the unnecessary systems. Just movement and aggression. That's all it needs." We gathered what we could. Fuel siphoned from parked vehicles. Canned food, bottled water, everything light and compact enough to load into the Suburban without compromising the suspension. Sam triple-checked the tire pressure, reinforced the rear windows with strips of laminated Kevlar tarp, and reconfigured the rear seats to keep Ellie in the safest central position. Tara had already taught her the rules. No talking during movement, no crying, and no looking out the windows unless told. It was chilling how fast a child could adapt when survival was the only thing that mattered. We pulled out just after sunrise, heading north towards Berlin Turnpike before cutting west. We avoided Route 7, which was already clogged with wrecked vehicles, and what looked like a downed National Guard checkpoint near Hamilton. We saw the remnants from a distance, burned-out Humvees, discarded gear, and bloodstains leading into a cornfield. Whatever happened there wasn't quick, and we weren't about to investigate. Sam stayed off the main roads entirely after that, following old gravel fire trails and maintenance access lanes he knew from hunting trips years ago. As we made our way closer to the outskirts of Round Hill, we encountered our first roadblock. Not a military one, this was local. Civilian-made. Pickup trucks positioned end-to-end, chains welded across the gaps, concrete parking barriers dragged into place. Spray-painted signs hung from them in all caps. "We don't have food, we will shoot, stay back." Behind the barrier stood 3 men in work jackets with scoped rifles. We slowed, but didn't stop. Sam flashed his lights once, rolled the window down, and raised both hands off the wheel as we inched forward. They didn't raise their weapons, but one of them, a lean man with a VA Forestry Service patch still sewn into his jacket, stepped forward and called out. "Where are you headed?" "Bluemont," Sam replied. "Not looking to stay, just passing through." "Radio said Bluemont went dark last night," the man said, not unkindly. "We've had 3 infected wander up from the East Trail since dawn. You sure you want to go that way? It's got fences and elevation. Better odds than staying out here." The man hesitated, then nodded. "Keep your lights off. Don't stop for anything. You got kids in that truck. Just one. Keep her head down, and if you see any with their eyes still moving after the body stops, don't wait to shoot." That last warning stuck with me. I didn't ask what he meant. We passed their blockade and made our way up through Woodgrove Road, cutting around the back of Sleater Lake. Even from the elevation, you could see the smoke from Leesburg. Something major had happened there overnight. Columns of black rising from the historic district. Sam guessed they'd tried to hold the courthouse complex or the municipal building and failed. We reached the southern approach to Bluemont just before 10 a.m. The town itself was almost eerily quiet. No sign of looting, no fires. But there were other signs. Broken windows in upper stories, blood smears on porch steps. An abandoned patrol car from the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office halfway through the side of a bakery. Its radio was still hissing with static, mic swinging in the wind from its curled cord. The road up to the tactical complex wound along a steep ridge, shaded by heavy pine and thick undergrowth. We climbed slowly, tires crunching over grit and loose stone, until we reached the main gate. It was closed. The place looked deserted. An old, privately owned firearms and survivalist training center known mostly to gun club members and ex-military types. Sam had done a few courses here over the years: long-range rifle fundamentals, casualty care, navigation. He said the owners were former Army Special Forces. The gate was reinforced with concrete pylons and wire mesh, but the keypad entry system looked dark. We honked once, nothing. Sam exited the vehicle slowly, motioning for me to cover him from the passenger side. He approached the gate, banged twice with the butt of his rifle, then waited. A full minute passed before we heard the click of motion from inside. A voice called out through a weathered speaker. "State your business, name, affiliation." Sam leaned into the intercom. "Samuel Merritt, civilian, former VARNG. I've trained here before. We're clean. We've got a child with us." Another pause. Then the gate slowly groaned open. A man in desert tan fatigues emerged from behind a concrete barrier, M4 shouldered but not aimed. He wore a patched tactical vest with the words "Read Instructor" stenciled across the front. "Get in, don't wait," he said. We didn't. Inside, the complex had become a temporary haven. Maybe 15 people in total, most of them former trainees, volunteers, or family members of the instructors. They had secured the facility well. Reinforced windows, sandbagged entries, high walls with overlapping fields of fire. A small solar array on the western roof provided limited power, and water came from an old gravity-fed spring system tucked behind the upper range berms. It wasn't luxury, but it was safe. We were processed quickly, checked for bites, tested for fever, interviewed in a makeshift debriefing room. Reed and a woman named Marianne, former EMT, now acting as the group's medical lead, coordinated our integration. According to them, the outbreak had spread farther than we knew. DC was already considered compromised. The CDC facility in Atlanta had gone silent. Several military bases had failed to respond to encrypted check-ins. It wasn't just local, it was national, and probably global. "They're not just sick," Marianne said. "They're reanimated. And it's fast, the incubation window's shrinking. What used to take hours now happens in less than 30 minutes. Some people turn in 10. We were shown to a converted classroom at the far end of the compound, our shelter for now. Sam and I took shifts at the watch post that night, scanning the ridge trails with night vision binoculars and low-beam IR floodlights. The air was damp with pine resin and the sharp, earthy scent of wet soil. The ridgeline to the west ran jagged across the horizon like the edge of a broken bottle, dense with underbrush and wind-twisted oaks. Nothing moved for the first 2 hours. No birdsong, no bugs. Just stillness. It wasn't natural. Something in the woods had silenced the landscape. At 1:12 a.m., my thermal scope picked up a heat signature near the tree line. Upright, human-shaped, not moving. A quick radio call to Sam on the northern wall confirmed no known patrols were out. Reed double-checked the manifest. Everyone accounted for. I stayed locked on the shape. Its heat signature was faint, cooler than a living person, but warmer than ambient. 10 minutes passed, it hadn't twitched. Then, as if triggered by some unseen cue, it took a half-step forward, then another. I watched it emerge slowly from the trees, skin like stretched wax, clothing torn, its head cocked in that eerily curious way we'd seen before. Behind it, 4 more emerged, spaced evenly, never making a sound. They didn't charge. They didn't approach the perimeter directly. Instead, they spread out in a crescent shape about 60 yards from the wall, just outside of direct floodlight range. Reed joined me on the platform, night vision goggles over his eyes. He gave a long exhale and lowered his binoculars. "They're probing," he said. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. We were thinking the same thing. These things were learning. They were testing our response time, our patrol patterns. This wasn't just mindless movement anymore. Something had changed. By 2:40 a.m., the shapes faded back into the brush. We swept the tree line with a thermographic drone at dawn. Nothing left. No corpses, no tracks. Just disturbed undergrowth and a torn scrap of polyester snagged on a branch. It reeked of decay and ammonia. The rest of the compound woke slowly that morning, groggy and tight-eyed, the weight of another uncertain day settling across everyone like wet cloth. Ellie clung to Tara at breakfast, quiet but alert. Her sketchbook, something she'd clung to through all of this, was now filled with crude outlines of monsters. Thin bodies, swollen eyes, broken limbs that bent the wrong way. She'd drawn them without ever seeing one up close. But somehow she knew. Sam sat beside me on an overturned ammo crate, scraping the last of a ration pack with a plastic fork. His face was drawn and hollow. I recognized the look. It was the same I'd seen on returning vets after long deployments. That slow erosion of emotion. He was operational, still making smart decisions, but you could see the pieces wearing thin. Reed called a meeting in the old training hall that afternoon. The whiteboard still bore faded traces of a ballistics lecture, but now it was covered in hand-drawn maps and labeled photos of infected individuals. A former NOAA analyst named Clay, short, intense, always clutching a tablet, gave us the sitrep. Everything east of the Shenandoah is compromised. Winchester's gone dark. Harper's Ferry had a firebombing event, possibly self-inflicted to slow the spread. The CDC channel went dead yesterday at 17:30 Zulu. As far as we can tell, containment has failed nationwide. We're working under the assumption that Bluemont is a temporary position only, not permanent. Sam raised a hand. What about the DoD fallback sites, Mount Weather, Raven Rock? Clay glanced at Reed. Reed responded. Mount Weather was overrun 4 days ago. Last comms indicated internal breach, possible exposure during intake surge. Raven Rock went dark 48 hours later. No evac signals. No automated defense activation. We believe they were taken from inside. A silence fell over the group like an executioner's shroud. Mount Weather was supposed to be the crown jewel of continuity planning. If that had fallen, there was no official plan left. So, what's next? I asked. We can't just wait. Reed nodded, already anticipating the question. We're scouting fallback sites. There's an old Cold War comms relay hub near Capon Springs. Buried, isolated, defensible. It was mothballed in the late 90s, but Clay thinks it still has a diesel reserve and usable structure. We'll send recon tomorrow. The rest of the day was spent prepping. Fuel, ammo, drones. Sam joined the recon team alongside an ex-FBI agent named Juno, a tough woman with a background in counterintel and a reputation for getting results. She rarely spoke, but when she did, people listened. I stayed behind to help reinforce the northern wall. The men we worked beside weren't soldiers. One had been a school janitor. Another was a lineman for Dominion Energy. Normal people forced to become something else. The former janitor, Paul, had hands like tree stumps and knew how to weld rebar cages in perfect symmetry. He talked about his daughter once, then never brought her up again. That night, Sam's team left just after sunset in a flat black Ford Super Duty, loaded with everything they'd need for a 3-day recon. Reed gave them strict comms protocol, radio silence unless compromised, GPS pings every 4 hours, and infrared ID beacons if they had to return under duress. I watched them disappear down the narrow graveled trail, headlights off, engine nearly silent thanks to a baffled exhaust system. They didn't check in at the first interval, or the second. At 4:17 a.m., a single encrypted text pinged Clay's terminal. "Base compromised. Do not return." Then nothing. Reed mobilized half the camp. We took perimeter positions and pulled Ellie and the other children into the bunker level beneath the range house. The external security cams were fed into a bank of monitors powered by a scavenged marine battery. At 5:42 a.m., we saw motion. One of the Super Duties was coming back. No lights, one flat tire. Front grille soaked in something dark. We unbarred the main gate with weapons ready. Juno emerged from the cab, alone. She staggered forward, blood across her face, one arm hanging limp. I could see the muscle torn open along her deltoid, but no bite marks. Reed ordered a full lockdown and medical screening. She didn't resist. In the infirmary, under stark LED lamps, she told us what happened. The Capon Springs relay had been intact. Dry, dusty, but untouched. They swept the entrance. Found backup diesel generators, water cisterns, even an old emergency rations locker. They were cataloging everything when Sam heard a noise in one of the sealed chambers. Not claws, not growling. A voice. It was speaking, English, clear. But distorted, too smooth, like a recording played through a filter. They breached the door and found a single figure inside. A woman, mid-30s, dressed in a torn FEMA uniform, standing motionless beside a broken terminal. Her eyes were milky, chest not rising. But she spoke again. "We see you." Juno fired first. Sam followed. She went down, but something behind her moved in the shadows. Fast, wrong, almost liquid. The team fell back. One man was pulled into the dark, another was caught on rebar. Juno made it out only because Sam held the passage. He never came out. Her voice cracked as she said it, but she didn't cry. We buried the gate shut after that, sealed it with concrete pour and thermite along the hinges. The threat wasn't just numbers now, it was intelligence. They were using the old tunnels, the forgotten systems, even mimicry. Reed posted triple watches at all ingress points, and we began rotating sentries every 2 hours to fight fatigue. No one argued. No one asked when it would be over. We all knew this wasn't going to end with a rescue convoy or airlift. The system had collapsed. We were surviving on the bones of what had been. For the first time since we arrived, the compound felt too quiet. No idle conversations. No joking over morning rations. Just the rustle of boots, the clink of magazines being topped off, and the heavy breathing of people who were doing math in their heads. How much ammo, how much fuel, how many days of food left. The hard questions no one wanted to say out loud. We converted 2 additional classrooms into ration storage and fallback points. Clay rewired the basement hallway with motion sensors made from salvaged garage door components, tied into an old Marine Corps laptop with a cracked screen. It beeped quietly every time something large moved within 20 feet. When we tested it with a dog-sized silhouette, it lit up red and pushed a signal to a strobe in the command room. At least, we thought, it would give us a few seconds. Juno hadn't spoken since her debrief. She stayed close to the infirmary, one arm in a sling, the other never far from her sidearm. Whatever she saw at the Capon Springs site had scarred her more deeply than she let on. Ellie stayed away from her, sensing something broken. She clung to Tara most of the time now, asking her to read the same stories over and over. The drawings she made had changed. No more monsters, just shadows, big and reaching. 2 nights later, something triggered the motion alert in the service hallway. Reed, Sam, and I were already geared up when the alarm hit. Body armor, suppressed ARs, IR strobes on our backs for identification. We moved fast, sweeping the corridor with weapons at low ready, Clay monitoring us from the command center. His voice crackled in our earpieces. Hallway 2, 5 meters past junction. Heat sig minimal, maybe 50 Celsius. Size of a medium dog, could be a test. We slowed. I took point with Sam on my left, weapon tight to shoulder. The lights were out, only the glow from our IR beams reflected off the walls. The hallway turned left and dropped slightly. I caught the faint sound of movement. Slow. Careful. We rounded the bend and froze. It wasn't a dog, it was a child. At least, that's what it looked like at first glance. Small frame, tangled hair, tattered clothes. Bare feet. It stood still, maybe 7 meters away, just at the edge of the stairwell leading to the old generator bay. Eyes wide open, but they didn't blink. I swept the beam up and down, no heat plume around the head, no respiration cloud in the chilled air. Reed whispered, "Hold fire." The thing turned its head slightly, jerky, like a video buffering at the wrong speed. Then it spoke. "Mr. Clay?" it asked, in a perfect imitation of Ellie's voice. My blood froze. I felt Sam tense beside me. I'd heard Ellie's voice 100 times in the last week. This was it, but wrong. Empty, like someone playing it back from a hollow place. Reed didn't hesitate. He fired one clean round from his suppressed M4, striking the figure squarely in the upper sternum. It dropped, spasmed once, then lay still. We moved in carefully. What we found wasn't a child, not anymore. It had the proportions of a juvenile human, yes, but the skin texture was waxy and cracked in unnatural patterns, like dried riverbeds. The joints were distended, almost melted. Its mouth was torn at the corners, revealing rows of malformed teeth, far too many for a child that size. There were black filaments under the skin, like wire or vein, pulsing faintly. Clay confirmed over comms that Ellie was safe, locked in the eastern wing with Tara. We burned the body in a barrel drum, added thermite just to be sure. The next day, the council made a decision. We couldn't stay. It wasn't just the breach attempt, it was the fact that the thing had gotten into the sublevel undetected. That it had learned to speak like one of our own. That it knew Clay's name. It meant surveillance. It meant patience. It meant strategy. That left one option: Raven Ridge. Reed hated the idea. So did I, but Clay had uncovered something from a salvage Department of Homeland Security drive. An internal memo outlining an emergency fallback location codenamed Haven Point. Not public, not part of COG, Continuity of Government Doctrine. A Cold War relic. Location, a hardened NORAD listening post buried under Raven Ridge, 34 miles southwest, originally meant to intercept high-frequency Soviet submarine transmissions, later converted to a biocontainment research annex under Project Hollow Sentry. The catch? No confirmation it was still operable. No guarantee of power. Just a reinforced steel vault, 60 meters under granite, and a chance. We divided into 2 teams. One would stay behind to guard the compound, buy time if we had to return. The other would prep for the extraction run. 5 vehicles, 40 souls, supplies for 3 weeks. That was the max we could carry and still stay mobile. I was assigned to lead Convoy 2 with Sam as my second. Juno would scout ahead on a dual-sport Kawasaki with night vision optics and a satellite ping tag. Clay rode with Reed in the comms vehicle. operating uplink and drone overwatch. The night before departure, I sat with Ellie outside the infirmary. She handed me a new drawing. Her, Sam, me, and Tara standing on a cliff above a dark valley. No monsters, just stars. I tried to smile, but my throat closed. The roads were worse than expected. I-81 southbound was a graveyard. Burned-out semi-trailers, collapsed overpasses, wrecks riddled with bullet holes. Signs of organized resistance, long gone now. We detoured through back roads, winding past abandoned farms and ghost towns. Once, we passed a traffic sign with FEMA lies scrawled in black paint. Clay picked up a signal. Shortwave burst on 7.313 megahertz, a ham band usually reserved for emergency weather traffic. Repeating tones, then a voice. If you're hearing this, you are not alone. There is shelter. Proceed to grid 39N78W. Transmit signal ID 23B upon arrival. This message will repeat. It repeated every 90 seconds. Clay traced the source to a high-gain Yagi antenna, likely automated. Same location as the Raven Ridge installation. We arrived at the mountain pass just after 1500. From above, the entrance looked like a service tunnel buried into the hillside. Overgrown with moss and ivy, rusted-out fence lines but intact. A biometric panel flanked the main blast door, long dead. Clay and Sam worked for an hour to power the panel using an improvised capacitor array. When it finally hummed to life, we expected it to reject us. Instead, it flashed green. Ident Alpha Delta 3. Access granted. The doors groaned open an inch, then another. Hydraulic pressure slowly built. When they opened fully, the stench hit us. Metal, ozone, and a faint undercurrent of antiseptic and old blood. Inside was dark. Still. Juno led point. We followed. The interior was a time capsule, 90s tech mixed with hardened structural design, CRT monitors, steel walls, biocontainment doors, a decontamination tunnel lined with UV sterilizers. We swept each room, marking cleared sectors with chalk and GPS tags. Deep inside, we found the ops room, still powered by a geothermal backup core, still cycling basic ventilation. A logbook confirmed last entry, May 17, 2021. Then nothing. No signs of a firefight, no bodies. Just silence. Clay connected to the mainframe. His face went pale. The logs showed Project Hollow Sentry had been repurposed in 2019. The new objective, monitor anomalous pathogen behavior in pre-collapse environments. Biological AI cross-integration was tested here. Language mimicry, pattern learning. The infected weren't just random mutations. They were test subjects, augmented, trained, and someone, somewhere, was still pinging them. Sam stepped beside me, jaw tight. "We didn't find a safe house," he said quietly. "We found the lab where it started." I nodded once. But it didn't matter now, because the doors were sealed behind us, and we were already being watched. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.